I'm here with lightweight top contender George Sotiropoulos. He's 6-0 in the UFC, fighting Joe Lauzon this Saturday, UFC 123. George, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start off with a quick question about training. How long is your typical training camp, and was there any special preparations that you've had for a fighter like Joe Lauzon?
Well, training camp never really ends. It's a lot more of a lifestyle than a camp. I just call it camp because that's what people call it. But it's more of a lifestyle for me. But specifically, I worked on some problems or positions and issues and techniques that Lauzon likes to work on and likes to go for. And he has his go-to moves or his cues and so forth that he's strong at. I observed his film and what he does, and I trained those positions and added them to my game, and I feel real confident in those positions now. But one more thing I'll add to that is in addition to obviously addressing what Lauzon's strengths are, obviously I continue working my regular game, so not taking myself out of my game. I'm working specifically on what I do to improve as well. So it's a bit of both, working on my game and addressing his.
I think what everyone wants to know is Saturday night when the bell rings, where do you see the fight headed?
I really think it's going to be a mixed martial arts fight. There's going to be striking, wrestling and grappling. You're going to see all aspects of MMA. It won't be fought in one area, but I believe I'll dominate every aspect of that fight. I'm really well prepared. I had great training and I've improved every aspect of my game.
One of the things that really impresses me the most is your education and your degree.
Well, let me just outline what it is. First, I studied international trade at Victoria University, and I received an associate diploma in business international trade, and then I went on to study and get my bachelor's in banking and finance and international trade, and then I finished up in 2001.
One of the things that I think everyone's dying to know is what really led you from the suit and tie in the banking and finance world to throwing on some gloves and stepping into the octagon.
I only had a short stint in my finance career. It didn't really get off. It was very short. It was over before it started. It was probably like a year and a half or so I spent in that field. But I always loved fighting. Growing up, the fighter is definitely in me. Anything to do with fighting, I watched and was obsessed over. And UFC was my calling. And when I saw it on a VHS tape back in, it was 97 or 96, I basically knew right there and then that's what I had to do. I was searching for a martial art. And not that MMA is a martial arts per se, it's a combination of martial arts, and that's what I wanted to do. It answered and ended all arguments and debates over what was the best, and basically everything was the best. And that's what I wanted to do. So, off I went, and it basically took my whole life into a new direction.
And then speaking of MMA, the culmination of different martial arts, that's exactly what you did. And if you look at your background, you are the true definition of a mixed martial artist. You've done boxing, wrestling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You've been all around the world. Everywhere around the world, you name it, you've been there and you've trained. How much more of an advantage do you think it gives you over a fighter who's just basically more based in just a central location?
I have a lot of experience, but that doesn't necessarily mean an advantage over anybody else, because somebody else who is homegrown or has access to all the ingredients necessary to become a mixed martial arts fighter. Yes, if you have all the ingredients to be a mixed martial arts fighter, then and you practice them well, and it's a daily practice, and you prepared yourself, then it's not necessarily an advantage. But I have a lot of experience in this field and this game, but that's the path I seeked out, and that's what helped lead me to where I am today. But if you can get everything in one spot and not have to travel, then great. But it wasn't the case for me.
Speaking still with MMA training, you were all over. You're now at the Fisticuffs. If you could just tell me a little bit about your coaches, your training partners.
Well, firstly, I'll start with Leonard Gabriel. He's the owner and founder of Fisticuffs. And he basically has spent his life in boxing. His family's been in boxing, and obviously evolved as a boxing trainer and practitioner, over the course of his whole life. And obviously learned his craft through his family and his grandfather, and through amateur boxing and professional boxing. And he's a very grounded, solid trainer and practitioner of boxing. And he knows all the nuances and details, and has great coaching methods to help with boxing. So, that's. Working with Leonard basically led me to move to Vancouver, Washington, and now I'm a resident of that part of the world. At the same time, I began training with Eddie Bravo. I'd met Eddie back in 2001 while training at the Machadas in California. Later, I would see him over the years. Again in 2003, we crossed paths, and again in 2005, we went to Abu Dhabi together at on the same event. I saw Eddie at a UFC in 2008. We got talking, and I asked him if he'd be interested in doing some training that day, and then he told me he was actually doing a seminar the next day, and I asked if I could come to it. So I said, come along, and then I went along, and it was basically the introduction to the rubber guard and some half guard and twister concepts and principles, and then I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to work with Eddie for a long time. And then, I said, can I come out and do some training with you? So I headed out to LA a couple of weeks later and did a week with Eddie, and then that would basically be the beginning of routine training for me. I would go to LA for a week or 2 weeks at a time, and then he saw that I was serious, and he started putting more time in directing the training for me through the school. And I was very lucky to to have that privilege and opportunity. And then now it's a solid and sound part of my game. So Eddie's 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu is another important aspect of what I do. Then back home, I also train with the guys at Impact Jiu-Jitsu, and my main training partners are Michael Chapman and Armand de Bruges, and also Josh Long, and they're all black belts in Jiu-Jitsu. We do everything together in terms of Jiu-Jitsu, and they help me with my preparation. They also part of my coaching and training partners, and they're very important. And then also at Impact is Eric Jaton. He's a 3-time All-American. He's got tremendous accolades and achievements in the sport of wrestling, and he's been coaching me since about February or January 2000 or this year. So and again, that relationship, and that's also grown significantly, and we've evolved tremendously since we first started training. So that's pretty much the basis of my training and my camp. But I also spar with the guys over at Team Quest, and I've got Matt Linland to thank for that. He's made that possible. And my main training partners over there would be the two Healy brothers and Dave Jansen. I've got a good crew of guys all around. I mean, I've got great sparring partners over at Fisticuffs as well. I've got national level boxing, amateur boxers, and professional boxers. I've got European level champion boxing sparring partners over there and training partners. So I've got just a good crew of guys to work with in every aspect of the fight game.
Now, I want to say congratulations, you're recently married. Tell us how training has impacted the married life and how you try and find time still to be with her.
Training hasn't impacted on my married life at all. It's just her finding time to be with me.
Last question. Going into a fight of this magnitude, something in which I think most people believe has the potential to be fight of the night, what's your feelings going in? And do you have any special routines or superstitions that you try and like to do on Saturday?
Well, besides the mati, it's the supreme Greek superstition, which is the evil eye. But besides the mati, no, I just basically go in there and I do my regular warm-up. I'm very regimented in what I do, and I usually go through the stages of my warm-up and technique drilling and shadowing and pads and all the standard stuff that you see most fighters doing.
You are very proud of being Greek and being of Greek descent. Is there anything that you wanted to say towards the Greek fan base? Anything you want to say to them?
Well, I'd just love to say, thanks to all my Greek fans out there. Great to meet new Greeks around the world, make contact as, just like we have. It's, it makes me very proud, but, the same can be said about seeing Australians as well. I just, I feel proud when I bump into Australians and I'm with Australians and both Greeks and Australians alike. It just gives me the same proud feeling.
Or anyone you want to say thanks to?
I'd like to thank Dethrone, my sponsor, as well as GNC Australia, the gun store, Curtis and Crawford watches, basically Fisticuffs Boxing, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, Impact Jiu-Jitsu, as well as Team Quest. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you. That was George Sotiropoulos. You can see him this Saturday, UFC 123 live at the Palace of Auburn Hills.